right. Good evening, everybody. It is Dr. Sean, your physical therapy application coach. Excited to be able to have another great testimonial video with my homie, Kristin. What's up? How you doing?
Doing good. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Doing great. How's Flagstaff?
It is way colder than I'm used to, and driving in snow is an adjustment, but it's fantastic.
How much snow do you guys have up there right now?
Not much right now. We're expected to get some tonight. So it's like nothing on the roads. It's just like all piled up on the side. So not too bad right now.
The gross part of the snow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's just jump right into it. Kristin, I want you to go ahead and tell people a little bit about your background. Let's start with like kind of how you decided to go into physical therapy and then like your undergrad experience, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, absolutely. So I actually grew up in Arizona in the desert part. It's called Casa Grande. And for my undergrad experience, I attended Brigham Young University. I did 1 year in person. Yeah,
Go
that's right. We both
Foods.
went there. Um, and yeah, so I did 1 year in person, and then after COVID, we transitioned to online and never really went back in person. So I actually did my undergrad in 3 different states: Utah, Florida, and Arizona, all through BYU online. And I guess like kind of how I got into PT, I feel like a lot of people, we have the experience of doing it ourselves as a patient. And that was my experience, was as a sophomore in high school, broke my ankle in a soccer game. And obviously, like as a sophomore in high school, everyone's kind of asking me like, you need to start thinking about what you want to do. And I like went there, and I remember sitting there with my therapist, and I remember thinking like, this is something I think I'd actually like to do. And it just kind of took off from there. It really did.
That's awesome. Very cool.
Yeah.
So let's go back to undergrad in 3 different states, right? Because there's lots of people who've had like struggles with adapting to online, but
Mhm.
not, I mean, you were at the same institution, but you were like, your life was changing constantly while you were going to school, right? So talk through that. How did you kind of keep pace and try to stay on track with getting your classes done in the midst of all that change? Oh, and you got married, right? So
I did. Yes. So I had a lot of different life events. And I also was working for 3 out of the 4 years. I worked 50 hours a week as well as going to school. So I was very busy. But I think like my main motivational factor was honestly physical therapy school. That was just always something I wanted to do. And even though we were going through a lot of life changes, that was just always my priority. And my husband was super supportive in that. He's like, no matter what goes on in our life, like that is number one priority, is you get to go do this. Like you've been wanting to do this for years. And so I think my motivation was just always thinking about physical therapy school, the people I wanted to impact, and how maybe it wasn't the classes I wanted to be taking, maybe it wasn't where I wanted to be taking them, but at the end of the day, it needed to be done so that I can be in the position I am now, like accepted into a PT program and getting ready to start that education process.
Absolutely. And I think I suffered from that a lot, like leading up to school, especially at the end. You're just like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like I'm so done of hoop jumping and all this stuff. And sometimes you just have to do it. Like there's no other way around it,
Yeah.
and you just have to suck it up, and it is what it is.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. I want you to also speak briefly to, because it doesn't get talked about as much. I think there's a lot of like single people who go to school. How do you feel like having someone, a significant other, a spouse, in your corner as you're applying to PT school? How did that make a difference for you?
Oh my goodness, it made such a difference. And I think you're right. Like people don't talk about that, and whatever that looks like for you, whether that's like a, significant other, boyfriend, girlfriend, or it's, a husband or wife. I think that just making sure they're really on board with the process is crucial. And Alec always knew that that was something that I wanted to be doing with my life, but I think that it was super helpful because it's stressful and it can be overwhelming, but having that burden to share with someone else and who's willing to kind of tell you like, just breathe, like you're more than qualified, kind of give you that confidence boost, but then also just to remind you like what's important in day to day. Like it is important to go to physical therapy school to have a great application, but it's also important to sleep. It's also important to go work out. It's also important to go outside. And I feel like having that significant other to help like remind you, you know what, like still continue to live the undergrad life, still enjoy life, and apply to PT school, you know?
For sure. For sure. I think that does get lost, especially when you're like, I remember before I was dating my wife, I was just so tunnel visioned.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like those other things were just like a burden. You know what I mean? Instead of being like,
Yeah.
no, this is like normal life. Like, you're not
Yeah.
always going to be applying to PT school. Like, you eventually
Right.
this is going to go somewhere. And then what are you going to have? Like, once you get into PT school and you graduate, if you don't remember if you don't know how to live, then it's gonna be
Right.
pretty boring.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I really feel like that was helpful. And then also, like I said, just sharing that stress, you know, with someone and having and them knowing how hard it was made like when I was accepted into physical therapy that much more exciting because he was just as excited, if not more than I was, because he knew how hard I had worked for it. So I think that's another bonus too. You get to
For
share the
sure.
excitement.
For sure. And I mean, you can speak more to this if you want to. You don't have to. I'll give a generality, but like, it wasn't just him supporting you. Like, in his endeavors, you were very supportive as well. And I think that's it's an important reciprocation. Is like, if you're going to school, like, you can't just pretend like the world revolves around you. Like, you need to give back to that other person in your life and make sure that they know that they're supported in their endeavors. So I think you guys were a
Yeah.
great example of that, whether that was Alec and his endeavors or you with PT school. I think it was really cool to kind of see how you guys bobbed and weaved on your relationship and how it ultimately worked out, which we'll get to in a minute of how that worked out. Right.
Yeah.
Um, okay. So now let's get to kind of the fun part where our stories collide. Right.
Yeah.
So how did you hear about physical therapy application coach?
So I actually had the wonderful opportunity of working as an operations support specialist or a tech in the same location that Sean was a clinical director. So it
Yeah,
worked
baby.
out. I should have worn mine.
Yeah. You probably gave all your shirts away, didn't you?
Mostly, yeah. Um,
I can't believe this.
Sorry. No, but it really just found ATI to just kind of get some shadowing experience and just to confirm that it's what I wanted to pursue and happened that you were the clinical director and it just kind of casually came up and I was talking about, yeah, like I'm thinking about applying and you're like, well, I have this business, you know, YouTube channel you can kind of check out and it turned out to be the reason I applied. So it was incredibly helpful.
It was pretty cool. And it was nice to be able to, kind of have that constant reminder every day you show up to work. It's like, oh, shoot.
Yeah.
I need to
No.
do this stuff.
Yeah.
Um, okay. So that obviously was like, you got introduced to my stuff.
Yeah.
What
Probably.
ultimately led to, I think you'll tell the story better than I can. When were you like, okay, I can actually do this. I can actually apply, when you previously, like, you weren't thinking about applying this year, right?
No, I wasn't. And I obviously PT was always on my mind and what I wanted to do, but kind of what you were touching with earlier, just supporting my husband. He plays football. And so we were in an in-between stage when I was working for Sean, and I just didn't know if like it was the right timing for us. And so I was a little bit hesitant to apply because I didn't know where he was going to be going to school and you know obviously wanted to stay together and so I had some hesitation but I remember we were kind of talking about it and we're going over what classes I needed, you know, if I've taken the GRE, just shadowing experience and just kind of you were like, well, everything could be done in the next few months, like are you ready to buckle down and do it? And I just sat there and I was like, yeah, like I felt like that's what I needed to be doing. And I'd been thinking about it for a while. So but then it just kind of hit me like this is a possibility and I'm ready to run with it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it was a fun conversation because it was almost like you had this look on your face, like a weight was lifted off your shoulders, but at the same time, that was like put right back on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. It was a
You're
different
like,
because instead of
oh,
being like
oh,
a confused, it was
crap.
like, all right, like let's go.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that was fun for me as like on multiple levels because any of you who are watching this who are aides or techs or just pre-PTs in general, which most are aides or techs in some fashion, like we know that you're not supposed to be there forever. Like that's not your goal. It's a stepping stone. And it's so fun and it's so exciting when you see people who just work their butts off, whether it's in school, in the clinic, whatever. be able to move on and progress, right? Because it's good to see hard work rewarded in the right ways. And I think that was fun for us. It was sad to see you leave, but at the same time, like, you know, that was you supporting Alec and his endeavors, and you guys took off. And then at the end of the day, it kind of came back around, and we'll get to the climax of where everything's leading and what's going on with that. But
Right.
it was fun on my end. And also, I think my biggest thing that I appreciated with you as a coach was I gave you something to do and you did it. You know what I mean? It was like, okay, you need to go to this hospital and talk to these people, and you found a way to make it happen. And then you're like,
Yeah.
okay, got that going. Now what? Now what? Now what? Now what? Um, and I think I'll probably be putting a video out about this, but my theme for 2023 is like, stop thinking about doing everything. Like, you have probably planned way more than you need to for things, and you need to just go and like execute. Um, and what are your thoughts on that one versus like, okay, what's the balance between planning it out versus just start rolling and figure out where things go?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I spent, because I've been thinking about doing PT for about 7 years. I had thought about this earlier. And everything I planned for 6 years pretty much, but I did everything within 1 year pretty much. And that was just all of a sudden, it's not like, in the future, or once I know this, once I've taken this class, once I have this knowledge and I'm like ready for it. In reality, it's, you got to start somewhere. You got to start applying your passion and doing it with your actions. And I absolutely agree with that. And I think, like, for me, just with you just kind of like telling me like, okay, like, this are some good things for you to be doing, and just realizing, okay, if I've been wanting this whole time for this opportunity, what am I ready to act on that? And I think, like, as a student and as an applicant, that's what it comes down to. Like, when you get that advice, when get that bad grade, or you get the good feedback, like, are you ready to utilize it, or like, what are you going to do with it? And just kind of making sure that instead of just planning, you're just kind of out there doing it. And then a huge thing too is just take the feedback you get from people. If you ask, then be ready to act on it. Otherwise, don't ask.
For sure. Thank you for that sentiment. I think it really is so crucial in all aspects of your life, right? Like,
Yeah.
you can't, we can sit there and stew and ruminate, but when the opportunity of a lifetime comes, you need to act on the lifetime of the opportunity. Otherwise, it may be gone, right?
Absolutely.
And I think, it's not like, I'm not trying to tell people just like throw caution to the wind and just do whatever. Like you said, you planned for 6 years for this, but
Mm-hmm.
there was kind of some fuzzy timelines with everything. Like, when should
Yeah.
I do this? And you got a green light and you were ready, and you just, because you had prepared, you could go. Right.
Right.
But I think the biggest thing with your preparation was it was reciprocated with action. It wasn't just like planning to plan to plan to plan, um, which I really believe is one of the big issues of our time, is that we believe that because we've read an article or we've watched a video, that we are like an expert or we understand something. But like, you have to go out and actually do something and experience things in order for it to have change in who you are as a person.
Yeah.
So props to you, kudos for that. I think that played a huge part in your application, because like,
Absolutely.
how many feathers in your cap do you think we put in that like few months?
Oh
Because
my
we were only
goodness.
like working together for what, like 2-3 months?
Well, yeah, we had a more brief
Like,
time.
in the clinic, I was at the other clinic, like overseeing the one you were at, but it wasn't like
Yeah.
every day type of
Yeah.
interaction.
I was at ATI for a total of 5 months.
Right.
And but yeah, but it was so much, because before that, I mean, I got good grades. I was doing my part in that aspect, doing a little bit of research. But that's something else that I feel like your program, the YouTube channel, really helps me with, is I would do research, but I didn't feel like I got answers, like no definite, this is what you need to be doing, this is what you need to be looking for. So that was something that was super helpful with you guys, and something that I appreciate about your guys's the coaching application. But I just think that it was just like, it was go. I just got 1,000 shadowing hours in that time span. I got between 3 different settings. I, finished GRE, like started, with my personal statement, started getting letters of recommendations together, and just all in that time frame. And it was so short, but it went by so quick.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, like, what's that definition of luck, right? When preparation meets opportunity, right?
Yeah.
So it's you put yourself in a good position, and then you met the right people and the right opportunities presented themselves. And so
Yeah.
then it worked, right? And it was
Right.
a success. So let's get to the fun part.
Yeah.
Tell us what happened after you applied and ultimately where are you going for PT
Yeah.
school?
Yeah, absolutely. So ever since because like I said, I grew up in Arizona. So when I looked up, physical therapy places, one of the very first places that popped up was Northern Arizona University. It was one of the very few programs in Arizona at the
Oh,
time.
lumberjacks.
Yeah, exactly. So I always kind of had my eye on that. Like I based a lot of my undergrad, the prerequisites I was kind of taking on that because they were like the very first program, that I looked into. They're an excellent program. Something that also like you guys taught me was some things to look for: location, cost, pass rates, like graduation, and then also the boards and like how quickly can you get out there and get a job. And NAU had fantastic statistics on that. And it's crazy because that's where my husband ended up going to play football, was NAU Flagstaff location. And so I applied there, with that being my dream program to go into, and the fact that I could, stay with my husband. And yeah, I applied in October, and mid-November they asked me to do an interview, and then I found out mid-December that I got in. And so that's where I'm going to be going next year.
That's awesome. And now you
Yeah.
can say that all in the course of less than a year, basically, that all came to pass.
Yeah, from pretty much start to finish. I mean, I had done, a few things in preparation. I had like a couple shadowing experiences, but not enough, to get it verified. Nothing like that. But I think that if anyone was to take something away from this video, it's that no matter your undergrad experience, no matter how much you've done, like, don't let that stop you. Just go out and get it. Buckle down, be willing to work hard for it, and just conquer it.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So that was one of my last questions, was like your closing advice. I think that pretty much
Yeah.
encapsulates it.
If I
And
could
how do
say
you
one
feel
more
like,
advice, can I just say one more advice? Sorry.
yeah,
My shadowing experience was also very possible due to connections. And I just think that sometimes when you're in the undergrad zone and you're just kind of grinding out prerequisites, you're not thinking about how important relationships are and the people that you meet. That's just kind of sometimes the back burner, kind of what we were talking about earlier. You kind of you get tunnel vision. You're not kind of looking at the things around you. But I mean, I got a lot of outpatient, working for you guys. And then
sure.
I went to a hospital pretty much through knowing someone that worked in the hospital from when I was in high school. And that's how I got into there. And then in a long-term facility, it was someone that I had met at the clinic I was working at, who had a friend whose mom worked there. Just absolutely bizarre, right? Like that doesn't happen all the time, but I was very transparent about what step I was in and just kind of involve people in the process. Sometimes I think that we get almost like, we think that we just have to do it ourselves. And that just wasn't the case for me. I wouldn't be where I'm at today and saying, oh, I got to PT school in a year. Like that, I don't feel like I can say that because there were just so many people that helped me achieve that. Like that wasn't me. Like that was a community that was willing to help me get there. So I think my other piece of advice, other than just buckle down and get working on it, don't let what you haven't done stop you to do what you need to do, but also make sure that you're developing connections that you can use now to get into PT school, but then also in the future. You never know what's going to matter, like who that's going to help you later on.
For sure. For sure. I think to your credit with that, as like when you were working, um, you were just dynamite the whole time when you were around patients. And so people were rooting for you, like when they get to know their aides or their techs and they're like, these are your goals, this is what you want to do. And because you're helping them so much, like they're so willing. And it's a huge network. Like when you think about the number of people that come into a clinic on a given day, like all these touch points that you have.
Yeah.
And obviously it's hard sometimes to like get that to get into the clinic. But
Right.
then I love what you're saying. Like, use the network when you're in the clinic of all the patients, and you never know who you're going to come across and the
Right.
opportunities that'll come your way because of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Kristin, why should people use physical therapy application coach?
Ugh, where do I begin? I think that just utilizing resources that you have. If you feel completely lost in what you need to be doing and how you can use, like, because I felt like I had such an unconventional undergrad experience. Like, how can I use that to my benefit? Like, I thought that maybe, like, universities would look at that, like grad programs would look at me and just be like, I don't know if she has what it takes. Right. And so if you have any doubts in your application, and areas that you feel like you may be lacking, I feel like this is a great place to start. Because you guys go over what you need to be doing, kind of how to just really get the process rolling. And then huge help with my essay coaching as well. I used to think I was a great writer, but apparently I'm not good at writing about myself.
Everyone's a
Um,
horrible writer after we work with them. That's
right, exactly. Um, so I just think that, like, for anyone who might be, asking if it's worth it or worth the time investment, I say no doubt in my mind. It's good to have someone in your corner, and I feel like you guys are great about that. I knew you personally for a few months, but even just meeting with Kyle, like, I felt like, he barely had met me, but he was rooting for me and he was doing everything he could to kind of help me. And I feel like you guys are really good at that. And you guys give plenty of free resources when other people charge. And then also the, essay coaching and interview coaching, it's just fantastic to really help boost you as an applicant and make you stand out. So, and I think that with so many people kind of going into this industry and so many applicants, it's needed. You might be the perfect candidate, but if you don't know how to showcase that, you're not going to get in.
Preach. I agree. And we are 100% rooting for you guys because it's just like our patients, right? Like, when they achieve their goals, that's exciting. That's what fills our cup. I almost
Right.
get more excited when applicants get in because it's like these are future people who are going to make huge impact in other people's lives. And it's fun to see the future faces of the profession that, again, you never know. Down the road, you might be like, whoa, this person came up with this crazy new technique or whatever. And or this person came as like on the APTA and is actually able to get reimbursement figured out so we can make money the way we're supposed to, all this other
Okay.
stuff, whatever, right? Like, I think that's what brings the joy, is like getting to see the bright faces that are coming in instead of some of these other people that are kind of like, oh, like, I don't know what the profession's going to be like. Like, I do. There's a lot of great people that are coming in, and people like Kristin who are just super motivated. They could go do anything they want to, but they decided to do PT because they love it. And that's what makes me excited about this gig and applicants like you. So best of luck staying in Flagstaff because you're up there now.
Yeah.
And best of luck to Alec with his football career. And you guys just get to be awesome little Arizona lumberjacks
Yes, we
and
do.
enjoy NAU.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Sean.